Okay, I think we all familiar with the program. Now we are going to start the second part. That is, we are taking some parts to discussion from the interesting book, Concept and Reality by Most Venerable Kadukurunde Nyananda Thero. And someone is ready with the book reading, and I invite someone to present where we have stopped.
Yeah, Bante. Hope you can hear me well.
Yes.
We stopped at the page 1010, starting at page 1010. So probably I'll start with the English explanation of the Pali verse about here. Right?
Okay, that's good. Yes, yes.
Yeah. Even so, Vacha, that material shape by which one designating the Tathagata might designate him, that material shape has been got rid of by the Tathagata, cut off at the root, made like unto a palm tree stump that can come to no further existence, and it is not liable to arise again in the future. Freed from the concept of material shape is the Tathagata. Vacha, he is deep, immeasurable, unfathomable, as is the great ocean. Arises does not apply, does not arise does not apply. Both arises and does not arise does not apply. Neither arises nor does not arise does not apply. That feeling, that perception, those preparations, that consciousness does not apply. The Buddha points out that a Tathagata has already got rid of each of the five aggregates of attachment, whereby one might speak of a Tathagata in the strict sense of the term. He is thus released from the concept sankha of the form, of feelings, of perceptions, of preparations, and of consciousness. The egoistic clinging which justifies those concepts is extinct in him. Since the Tathagata no longer identifies himself with any of those aggregates, to speak of a Tathagata's rebirth would be as meaningless as the attempt to locate the fire that has gone out, released from its fuel. In Avyakata Samyutta of Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha is seen...
Sorry, Avyakata Samyutta.
Avyakata Samyutta, the Buddha in Samyutta Nikaya, the Buddha is seen explaining to the Vachagota the difference between the ordinary and the emancipated individual with the analogy of fire.
Yeah, comment, Saman. So, if I remind you, it will recall you what we were discussing. So basically, there was a tetralemma introduced by certain Brahmanic tradition. So they are talking of tetralemma, 4 different kinds of possibilities. One can exist, does not exist and does not exist, not exist, not exist. So kind of a confusing, and 4 different logics they introduce as the tetralemma. And kind of a meaning is there. Now, say, for example, if someone is saying black, then someone saying white, then we can see the black and white are 2 opposite things, either black or either white. And how about black and white? Then that's another state, black and white. And another state one can define, not black, not white, something like that. So this tetralemma is such kind of a logic where 4 states are introduced instead of typical what we are familiar with is the kind of dualistic way of thinking, either off, either on, either white, either black. Likewise, but we can introduce more to it as a tetralemma. But the interesting thing is, so when with this kind of logical reasoning, logical thinking, people start proliferating about the Buddha, about the say Tathagata, about the Arahant as well. And they want to know what happened to the Tathagata, what happened to the Buddha after the death. And that is the question. So is he going to exist after the death? Is he not going to exist after the death? Is he going to exist as well as not going to exist after the death? Or is he not existing and not existing after the death? So this is the kind of tetralemma applied to the Buddha, applied to the Tathagata, to the Arahant. They are asking. But Buddha very beautifully mentioned to Vachagotta, it is very much like you are going to ask what's going to happen or to which direction the fire is going after a fire extinguish. You know, when we are talking about a fire, so fire is burning because of certain fuel. Assume that the fuel is expired and everything is now not available. Now the necessary requirements are not there, necessary fuel is not there, then we can simply say fire has extinguished. Now, if someone is asking to which direction the fire has gone, so that is not a valid question. So now you can see Buddha is using that simile, the fire simile, to convince Vacha about the meaningless approach for asking where the Tathagata will be reborn after the death, where the Buddha, the Arahant going to be reborn, going to appear after the death. It is very much like you are going to ask to which direction the fire will go after the extinguishment. Okay, Saman, we can continue.
Seyatapi vacha aggi sa upadano jalati no anupadano evameva kwaham vacha saupadānas upappatim paññāpemi no anupādānassāti yasmin panako gotama same acci vātena kittā dūrampi gacchati imassa panabhavam gotamo kim upādānasmim paññāpetīti Yasmin vacha samaye acci vātena kittā dūrampi gacchati tam aham vātupādānam vadāmi. Vāto hissa vacha tasmin samaye upādānam hotīti. Hotīti. Yasmincha panako gotama samaye imcha kāyam nikkipati sato cha anyataram kāyam anuppatto hoti.
Here it is satto. Yasmin ko vacca samaye imancha kāyam nikkipati satto cha anyataram kāyam anuppatto. Yeah, go ahead.
Anupatto hoti imassa
hoti tang aham anupatto hoti tang aham. Oh, you are talking here. Okay. Hoti imassa, correct. Go ahead.
Hoti imassa panabhavam gotamo kim upadānasmim paññāpetīti. Yasmincha ko vacha samaye imancha kāyam nikkipati satto cha anyataram kāyam anuppatto hoti tam aham tanuppādānam vadāmi.
Sorry. Tan aham
tanhupādānam vadāmi. Tanha hissa vacha tasmim samaye upādānam hotīti.
Right.
Just as vacha, a fire with fuel blazes up, but not without fuel, even so vacha, I declare rebirth to be for him who has grasping. But Master Gotama, at the time when a flame flung by the wind goes a very long way, as to fuel, what says the Master Gotama about this? At the time when a flame vacha flung by the wind goes a very long way, I declare that flame to be supported by the wind. At the time vacha, the wind is its fuel. But Master Gotama, at the time when a being lays aside this body and arises up again in another body, what does Master Gotama declare to be the fuel for that? At that time, vacha, When a being lays aside this body and arises up again in another body, for that I declare craving to be the fuel. Indeed, Vacha, craving is going on that occasion the fuel.
Okay, one interesting point, Saman, so we can point out here. Now, sometimes people are asking, okay, what is transferred from this place to the other place? What is transmigrated from this life to the other life? So, likewise, people are talking about a soul, a self being transmigrated from one life to the other life. So, this kind of a soul-related, self-related teachings are also there. But the Buddha's answer is very interesting here. So, with the simile of a fire, now we know that if we are considering bushfires, so it is very rapidly spreading when the wind is there. So, the wind is making a big role in spreading of a bushfire. So, from one tree to another tree, the other tree may be a little far away, but the wind makes the fire transfer to the other tree, and then the spreading happens very, very quickly, rapidly. The wind plays a pivotal role there in the spreading of the bushfire. Similarly, here, how about what is being, say, upadana, what is being caught or what is being grasped? When one person, say, we'll take a person here with the name person. So, one person die here, and he may be reborn at another life, another body. So how it happens? Then Buddha say, in between the tanha becomes the upadana. So tanha is acting as the transmigration. To help this transmigration, tanha appearing as a kind of a mechanism. It is not any soul or something. The tanha itself is the kind of contributor. When tanha is present, so the fire can't extinguish because the tanha is present. Tanha is pushing us towards another life, something like that. So probably you have heard about the bhava tanha. So bhava tanha always pushes us for a future event, kind of a futuristic existence. So I want to live future, I want to live tomorrow, I want to continue. How about my children? How about my parents? How about my country? So likewise, so the mind is very much like inclined towards further and further about an existence, about well-being, about a comfortable living, about a continuation, and always want to become someone or always want to exist further. So this kind of a pulling, or rather this kind of a pushing, driving is coming from the bhavatanha. So we can say, therefore we can safely say, so this bhavatanha is helpful for this kind of a rebirth. Say one disappear or one dies here, and as a result of the tanha, one is reborn at another place, and tanha becomes the fuel. Tanha is what being clung to. Okay, Saman.
It is significant that the term Nibbana, owing to its metaphorical connections with the going out of a fire, is itself suggestive enough to forestall the above quadrilemma. As in the case of the fire, it is linguistic convention, nibbutoti sankam gacchati, which should not be transgressed or misconstructed. In addition,
Misconstrued.
Yeah, misconstrued. In addition to its psychological import as the allayment of the triple fires of lust, hatred, and delusion, it also has this eschatological significance in the sense of the complete allayment of the conflagration that is sansaric suffering, dukkha nirodha. However, these metaphorical implications underlying the term Nibbana seem to have become obscured in the course of time due to far-fetched commentarial exegesis.
Okay, here one second. So basically this Chatuskotika Tarka, that quadrilemma. So this quadrilemma being very much abandoned and basically fairly somewhat kept aside, and the Nibbana, the term Nibbana is very much represented using this fire simile. And there's a kind of a fire simile Buddha introduced just for us to understand what is happening when one attains Nibbana. The final Parinibbana is well explained by this fire simile. So no point of asking a rebirth about an Arahant, because we know it is a irrelevant question. It is not a useful or meaningful question. It is a meaningless question. So therefore, if someone is asking, okay, where the fire has gone after when it is extinguished, so it is very much like you are going too far. You're thinking too much. So the thinking too much, you are proliferating in a way. So you have to understand, okay, fire has extinguished because the necessary fuel is not there. No point of further thinking about it. No point of further experimenting about it to recognize to which direction it has gone. It's no point. It's useless. So the too much thinking, proliferation, conceptualization can produce that kind of overthinking, and therefore it is applied even to the Nibbana. Now, according to this simile, so Nibbana, when one attains Nibbana also, what has happened is that the grasping is not there. So when the grasping is not there, there can't be further becoming. Upadana paccaya bhavu. So when there is no grasping, there is no becoming, there is no existence. So Buddha declare for existence only for one who is having grasping. So grasping is a must, grasping is a prerequisite for further existence, for further appearance, for rebirth. Grasping is a must. Grasping is a necessary, essential requirement for the further existence. But when there is no grasping, completely non-grasping, when the mind is completely unattached, when there is no grasping, then no point of talking about a rebirth. So the grasping is the fuel. When there is no fuel, the fire extinguished. So no point of asking where it has gone. We can simply say the grasping is not there, the fuel is not there. It was continued because of the grasping and continuation of the fueling, but now it was stopped, so the continuation has stopped. Fire extinguished. The Arahant passed away. Nibbutoti sankang gacchati. So we can simply say he attained Nibbana. So he has cooled down. So this cooling. So the cooling is a kind of an effect where the Nibbana, the term is highlighted. It has cooled down. Nibbutoti sankang gacchati. So that meaning, the Nibbana meaning, the term's meaning is merely, okay, it has cooled. The fire has cooled. So here we can say the fire is lust, hatred, and delusion. So those are the three fires. So these three fires has cooled. The fire of lust has cooled. The fire of hatred has cooled. The fire of delusion has cooled. And so in that sense, we can simply say all the defilements are abandoned. So the mind has become very cool, very tranquil, and serene. Okay, now everything has settled, something like that. But when we are trying to too much thinking, so then the things can become more complicated. It's very difficult to then understand what's really happening. Okay, Saman.
In the Anuradha Sutta, the Samyutta Nikaya, we find the monk Anuradha seeking the Buddha's advice as to how he should meet the arguments of the heretics when they raised the quadrilemma relating to the Tathagata. He confesses he had already faced such an unpleasant situation that he took up the position that the state of the Tathagata after death can be predicted in other than those four ways. The heretics concerned had then ridiculed him as an incompetent newcomer in the order. and now he is at a loss to understand how he can put up a reasoned defense in any such future debate. Would the Lord please explain the correct position? Now the Buddha at once proceeds to catechize Anuradhas, reminding him of the impermanence and suffering characteristic of the five aggregates, thus convincing him of the fact of anatta. He also points out that the appellation Tathagata can neither be identified with any of the five aggregates, nor can it be distinguished from them. Thereby he disapproves of Anuradha's view that the state of the Tathagata can be predicted in other than those four ways, since the four alternatives exhaust the universe of discourse. Then the Buddha makes this strange revelation that the Tathagata cannot be said to exist in the strict sense of the term, even here and now, not to speak of his existence hereafter. Ettate Anuradha ditteva dhamme sacchato tettato tathagate anupalabhyamane kallang nutang veyakaranang yoso avuso tathagato uttama puriso paramapattipato tang tathagato anyatrimehi chatuhi Anyatrimehi chatuhi tanehi panyapemano panyapeti hoti tathagato parammaranativa. Then Anuradha sings in just this life, a Tathagata is not met within truth. In reality, it is proper for you to pronounce this of him, friends.
Reality, is it proper? Is it proper for you to pronounce?
Yeah, sorry about that. Is it proper for you to pronounce this of him, friends? He who is a Tathagata, a Superman, one of the best of beings, a winner of the winner of the highest gain, is proclaimed in the other than these four ways. The Tathagata exists after death. Anuradha confesses that his previous conclusion was wrong. Finally, the Buddha sums up the correct position in these words. Pubbe chaham Anuradha etarahicha dukkhancheva panyapemi dukkhassa cha nirodham. Both formally and now also Anuradha, it is just suffering and the cessation of suffering that I proclaim. This sutta too thus makes it sufficiently plain that the four alternatives are laid aside because they are irrelevant and meaningless from the standpoint of Dhamma. Once the misconceptions underlying the quadrilemma are cleared up analytically, the quadrilemma dissolves of itself. The solvent is none other than the law of dependent arising itself. The term Tathagata, as much as any other concept, is a convenient linguistic symbol used to comprehend a complex process of conditionally arisen mental and material phenomena. It exists neither in the five aggregates nor outside of them. However, though he is composed of the five aggregates, the Tathagata has this difference from the ordinary bundles of aggregates, the wordlings, that he no longer cherishes, the illusion of an ego, and as such as he does not cling to any of the five aggregates. As we have already mentioned, this makes him so incomprehensible from the wordling's standpoint that he is regarded as deep, immeasurable, unfathomable, as is the great ocean.
Okay, now here also another point. So basically, Buddha points out to Venerable Anuradha. So when Venerable come across a kind of a question from the other ascetics, heretics. So they're asking, okay, is the Tathagata going to exist after the death? And then Venerable Anuruddha saying, no. How about not existing? Still no. Existing and not existing? No. Not existing, not existing. And not existing. So that also no. So it is apart from those four states. Then actually they simply looked down him and they simply left. And then Venerable Anuruddha approached the Buddha and he is explaining what has happened. And then Buddha particularly highlights the anatta. So he's asking series of questions from Venerable Anuruddha, emphasizing about each and every aggregate and getting the answer from Venerable Anuruddha. So this each and every aggregate is arising and passing away. So you can't find a self there. Everything is impermanent. You can't find an eternal soul or self there. Each and every aggregate. Then how are you going to have a self? So basically there is no self and none of the aggregates are providing a self. None of them have a self. And no point of even telling that apart or out of this quadrilemma, there is the experience or explanation about a Tathagata, about a Buddha, about an Arahant, is also a wrong interpretation. And interestingly, here Buddha highlights, forget about the existence of the Tathagata after the death, existence of an Arahant after the death. Even when he is living right now, there is no such existence. This is a very interesting, eye-opening kind of a logic statement. So Buddha say there is no Tathagata, there is no Arahant even right now. Because we typically take from the, say for example, when we are looking at the Buddha, assume that we really have seen the Buddha. Probably we see the outside look. We see his beauty and we see how he's going on Pindapata. Probably we see how he's preaching. So that is the outer appearance, the form aggregate. So we declare the form aggregate as the Buddha. And probably when he's preaching the Dhamma, probably we can simply say, okay, he's the Dharma Raja. He's the owner of the Dhamma. So based on the Dhamma also probably we are trying to attribute it to a person, attribute it to a Buddha. So likewise, we as the outsider, we are always trying to make a person, very much like personifying every time. So this is how we typically consider the people, individuals. So we do a kind of individuation. Whenever we see, we individuate and we kind of impose a person. She is my mother, he is my father, this is my sister, this is my daughter, this is my son. So every time we do the individuation and we personify, and then this is how we typically consider. That is because of our ignorance. But for the Buddha, so during his full enlightenment, complete enlightenment, so he has completely disengaged from this process. So he is no more identifying with the form aggregate as a person. He is no more identifying with the feeling aggregate as a person, perceptions aggregate as a person, formations aggregate as a person, consciousness aggregate as a person. So for him, just after his full enlightenment, all are very much like penetrated. He is no more grasping any of these aggregates as me, myself. For us, even though we say, okay, there is Buddha exists, there is Buddha Gautama exists, but for him, he never grasped any aggregates as I am the Buddha, I am the Buddha Gautama or something like that. So that delusion is not with him. So therefore he simply declare here, forget about Anuruddha, about the passing away of the Tathagata. Even right now, you are not having a Tathagata in that sense. So that's a very interesting and eye-opening kind of a statement, because we want to see the Buddha, we want to declare an existing Buddha, but now Buddha say, so he has gone beyond that. He has gone beyond the form aggregate. He has gone beyond the feelings aggregate, perceptions aggregate, formations aggregate, consciousness aggregate. But we are simply using the terms, names, terminologies. He too himself is using them to explain the Dhamma, but in reality, he is not grasping anything as a person. So therefore, Buddha here further points out, it is deep, immeasurable, unfathomable, as is the great ocean. So it's a very interesting area for us to also to think about, little ponder about it. And with that note, I'd like to conclude today's. Okay, I think probably someone you can read the next paragraph also, as it further confirms what we have discussed.
Yeah, but since there is no more clinging, there is no more rebirth, but this fact cannot be indicated through the second alternative, because there the term Tathagata has the implicit prejudice of a soul. To do so would be to leave the door open for the annihilationist's view. The charge of annihilation does not arise when one's grasps the law of dependent arising and the fact that the Buddha merely preached about suffering and its cessation. There can be no annihilation since there is no soul to be annihilated. Hence, the final cessation in Nibbana is no more lamentable than the death of an unborn son. There is no room for eternal entities in the terms of Tathagatas, for they are those who comprehend and proclaim the law of dependent arising, which is said to endure in the world whether Tathagatas arise or not. Tathagatas themselves are specific conflagrations of suffering which go out after an incandescent flicker as they no longer hanker after more and more fuel. Although the standpoint of Buddhism is thus made clear, there is a general dislike for the metaphor of the fire for fear of arriving at the annihilationist view. This fear, it must be said, it's totally unfounded. On the other hand, there are some scholars who even exploit this metaphor in order to foist an absolute cosmic principle or some nominal essence from which beings come out and to which they finally return. Thus, Keith presumes that the ancient Indian conception of fire admitted of such an underlying, perduring essence. Even if one is disinclined to the state one's deep-seated soul prejudice in such bold terms, one is sometimes tempted to demur between the possibilities of a positive and negative answer regarding the eternalist and nihilist point of view. The inquirer is sought to be kept in a permanent state of suspense as to the correct position. This reluctance to countenance the force of the fire metaphor is due largely to the promising of the egoistic child in man, which
promptings of the
egoistic child in man, which loves to eat the cake as well as have it. The Buddha's attitude, however, was quite different. Although he was not categorical as regards the four alternatives, he clarified the correct position by resorting to the law of dependent arising, which he illustrated with the fire metaphor. Acci yatha vata vegena kitto upasivati bhagava attang paleti na upeti sankang evang muni nama kaya vimukto attang paleti na upeti sankang. Lo upasiva,
I think,
he replied.
Raman, I think it will take fair amount of depth. I think we'll take it to next day.
Yeah,
Because so basically, I think the point is quite clear. So Buddha is pointing out rebirth only when the upadana is there, the clinging is there. But for the arahants, he no more clings, he no more do any kind of upadana. So there is no such rebirth. But that doesn't mean there is a complete annihilation of a person. I mean, so the annihilationist view is also not there. So someone might say, okay, since he is not upadana, so he now going to not exist, but till that point he existed. But that is also wrong to say like that. He was thinking that there was someone, but that is a mere thought process. That's a mere delusion. In reality, there was no anyone who is there to realize as a person. So there is no one to die in that sense. we have to say. So there is no annihilation either. So that's why interestingly that Buddha's argument here to Venerable Anuradha, not to think about the future of the passing away of a Tathagata, but even now Anuradha there is no Tathagata. That's very interesting. So we are taking from a soul point. We are taking from a self view, thinking that there is a Tathagata, there is a Buddha, there is a Gautama Buddha. So we are taking from a personality view, we are taking from a personal level. But for the Buddha, he is not clinging to anything. So for him, there is no an existence of a self. Okay, with that note, we'll conclude today's Dhamma discussion. Sorry, this related to this book, Concept and Reality. Now I'd like to open the session for questions.
Asarai Sarinasa.
Yeah.
We have 5 questions today.
Right.
Question number 1 of 5. This is a general question. Dear Bhante, my question is regarding the long-term mental status of mindfulness practitioners. I have been practicing almost 10 years now and am glad to acknowledge the many benefits of the practice. In general, my mind is silent compared to before the practice, and there are less and less things in this world which excites me, even though I have the capability and means to have them. I tend to think this must be the effect of viragi momentum, which builds up with the practice. However, I often notice that some of my Dhamma friends who are practicing the same manner and putting similar efforts, advocating to enjoy life rather than moving away from excitement. Example, going on cruise trips, finding new friends, etc. In general, if the long-term natural trend is dropping various activities, avoiding new associations, and getting a simple and frugal lifestyle, not wanting anything new, is there something wrong with that mentality, Bhante? Much merits for your insights and guidance. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Very interesting question. Actually, I feel it depends on the person, because there may be certain person who are very much like still need some kind of a excitement, still requires some kind of a sensual pleasures. So we can't say that everybody want to be really matured and they have to be really dispassionate since they are practicing Dhamma, since they are practicing mindfulness, Vipassana. So we can't expect everybody to become really matured like Arahants. So it's a kind of a gradual process. And if we immediately try to cut off everything, that also makes the mind quite imbalanced. And if you refer Ogatarana Sutta, so the idea, the teaching, the message given in the Ogatarana Sutta is that if you are struggling too hard, then also that's a problem. There is a problem. And if you are not striving, that is also not the path. So yeah, we are going in a kind of middle way. We are not struggling and going through very strenuous self-mortification. On the other hand, we are not completely ignoring and completely indulging in the sensuality. So you have to go in the middle. Okay, you give some time for some kind of a pleasure if necessary, if really that is sort of longing by the mind. Otherwise, you can continue the path in a more mature way, but not immediately. So therefore, depending on individuals, we have to handle this question. We can't generalize this telling, okay, everyone has to say like this, everyone has to be now dispassionate, all the Dhamma practitioners have to come to this. Definitely, they may come to that maybe after some time, but at the moment, they may still require some kind of an agitation. They may still require some kind of an enticement. So that's why they are still going for that. And probably they may be even pretending. That is also possible. Say, for example, they can enjoy to some extent, and there is no grasping and there is no any kind of proliferation. Internal quietude is still remaining, even though they see something. Now, say, for example, we are talking about ditte dittamattam bhavissati. So one can say, okay, I am not looking at anything because I want to maintain the sila. Okay, I'm not looking at a movie, looking at anything. So that's another way of doing it. That is the, we can say, the restraint. But there may be another person who has practiced fair amount of mindfulness vipassana. Now he can look at something, but nothing registers in his mind. He's not grasping anything, and his mind simply glancing. His mind is not landing upon anything. His mind is not mixing with anything. His mind is not get tangled with anything. Then he has a kind of a extraordinary capacity. He can see, but not getting deluded. He can see, but not getting defiled, engaged, something like that. But it may require a fair amount of practice. But this is another area that we can explore. So you can simply put yourself into that and see. Are you able to look at news, for example, without getting agitated? Now, say, for example, when you are looking at a news article or television news, so you are browsing through the internet and going through some news items, probably you get agitated. You may get depressed. You may feel emotional and you feel frustrated and you feel burdened. All these things are there. But how about looking at it without coming to such state? Are you able to maintain a very neutral, unattached mind even you are watching news? I mean, this is not easy, by the way. But when someone is maturing, probably he may reaching something like that. He may be able to look at, he may be able to deal with these mundane things, but not burning himself, not getting tangled with them. And his mind is very much like maintaining kind of a shock absorber type of an effect, kind of a cushion type of an effect, where the mind is quite detached even though he see it, something like that. So different scenarios we can discuss with this, and very difficult to come to a direct conclusion.
Question number 2 of 5. This is on mindful sitting. Dear Venerable Sir, can you please explain Asana? State that it is Vedananupassana. And when watching the mind and thoughts, we know it is Chittanupassana. However, in Dhammanupassana, there are some clear boundaries and indicators based on what we observe mindfully. With metta, that's the end of the question.
Dhammanupassana, it's fairly comprehensive, and it covers all the 5 aggregates. And you see, if we look at the Khandha Pabbha, all the Khandhas are explained there. So you are looking at iti rupang, iti rupassa samudaya, iti rupassa attangam. Iti vedanaya samudaya, iti vedanaya attangam. Iti sanyaya samudaya, iti sanyaya attangam. So likewise, all 5 aggregates are there, if you refer the Khandha Pabbha. So that means in Dhammanupassana, you are further and further maturing the practice to all the 5 aggregates, not only Kayanupassana, not only the form aggregate, not only Vedananupassana, not only the feeling aggregate. So you are going through all the different aggregates and, furthering your practice, further enhancing your practice, maturing your practice. But if you consider the Nissarana Pabbha, we can say it is very much into and then the Satya Pabbha also fairly into Chittanupassana. But if you consider the Khandha Pabbha, very much comprehensively touching each and every aggregate. So we can't simply narrow it down to a particular aggregate, but it touches almost like everything.
Question number 3 of 5. This is also mindful sitting. Dear Bhante, during mindfulness on breathing, when the breath settles and fades away, we get to a spacious space where various sensations can be found at a far distance. Even the thoughts are at the periphery of this space and time to time come to the forefront. It is quite different than the normal thoughts which we get entangled during day to day. What are these thoughts which stay around the periphery of awareness, which do not come to the forefront? With metta, that's the end of the question.
No, actually, we are the ones getting tangled. Thoughts are merely thoughts, but during the previous occasions when we are not mindful and we are ignorant, the thoughts first come to the periphery, but we go and attach with them. We invite them inside. So that's the issue. It is not that immediately they come to the inside. According to this explanation, we can think like, okay, first they are coming at the periphery, but now I like that thought. I get trapped in that thought. I invite that. So I personify that. So I get tangled with it. So then it invades me. They completely invade or overwhelm the mind. But when you are mindful, when you have a certain amount of wisdom, then we are very much like disengaged from the process. So you can now watch the thought as a mere thought. It is not that you are being tangled, but you are maintaining kind of a distance. And it is very much like they are coming at the periphery, and you are able to maintain a fairly unattached, fairly independent state of mind, even though time to time thoughts are coming and trying to peep into, but you are not encouraging it, you are not getting deluded, you are not getting driven by them, because you are fairly equipped with wisdom.
Question number 4 of 5. This is a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, regarding the transmigration through tanha from this life to next life, as explained today, does tanha act as a medium, or there is no such medium but just a momentum like a force without anything as a base? With metta, that's the end of the question.
Yeah, I can agree with you. I mean, if we don't need to go to thinking, okay, there is someone who is attaching to tanha and that act as a bridge to cross from this end to the other end, using tanha as a bridge. Someone is crossing from this end to the other end. So that is also going to a soul view, soul type of view. And we can simply say there's a kind of a momentum of these aggregates. And now at this death moment, the tanha appear like the medium. Yes, I can agree with you. And then the next moment appear on another body, another 5 aggregate. Yeah, that's very good to point it out. Thanks for the question.
Question number 5 of 5. This is also a Dhammasaman question. Dear Bhante, if tanha, desire, leads to rebirth, how does vibhava tanha lead to rebirth? Thank you for your answer. That's the end of the question.
So still, vibhava tanha doesn't mean that, say, without, or rather, say, how to say, tanha, I can agree. Okay, there is sensual desire, and then bhava tanha, the desire to exist further and further to continue. Vibhava tanha still basically say, I want to discontinue. I is still there. There is a person who wants to discontinue. There's a person who hates the current state. So I hate it. I don't want it. So this is the vibhava tanha. So basically, you experiencing as a person, you manifesting as a person, and that person does not want to exist, do not want to exist. This is the annihilation in a way. So there is still an existing person, and that existing person doesn't want to exist, doesn't and want to get rid of. So basically, this is still is kind of a deluded state. So you are still performing as a person, perceived as a person. So that is the issue. So since still the personality view is there, the ignorant personality view is there, the continuation happen. The rebirth may happen. So even though you want to does not exist, still you perceive as a person. So that is where the annihilation is view has come to the being. So annihilationists are believing there is a person, there is a self, but that self want to annihilate. That self want to discontinue. Still the ignorant self view is existing.
That's the end of the written questions. We have a little bit more time. So, Anansa, do we want to open the...
Yeah, we can spend few minutes, yes.
If anyone wants to ask a question, they can raise their hand in Zoom and I can give everyone a few minutes. No extra questions. It looks like silence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Good.
So we can end the program. To end the program, I would first like to thank Bhante for his valuable time, even with the busy schedule at the monastery. To all the supporters of this program, both seen and unseen. To participants for joining and sharing their questions and the practice. Sadhu, sadhu, sadhu. Thero Saranai.
Yeah, Thero Saranai.
Thero Saranai. Avasarai.